At the same time, Pete Hegseth seems proud that the United States had stopped funding the war in Ukraine. How should we interpret that statement by Pete Hegseth he made in Senate?
Well, I think that, amongst other statements in the Senate, demonstrate what the priorities of this White House are. And specifically, Pete Hegseth was also glowing, very proudly stating that the promised funds that are included in the law that was passed in December of 2025, the National Defense Authorization Authority, that funding for Ukraine, $400 million, has not to this date been prepared or sent in terms of military aid to Ukraine. And he started sparring with the Senate saying, well, you keep referring to Ukraine aid, but all I read in the text is aid to Europe, to which Senator Shaheen, the ranking member of the committee, made it very clear. Everybody on that committee, as well as Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, know why that language was changed. And she made it very public that the Senate and the House changed the language of the legislation to not have it include aid to Ukraine because the President of the United States refused to sign any legislation that had the words aid to Ukraine. And so therefore they changed the wording to be aid to Europe, with all understanding that the aid would go to Ukraine. So there are many instances like that within Secretary Hegseth's testifying in front of Congress, not to mention that 5 months after the passage of that legislation, when they were testifying in front of Congress, the Senate heard for the first time that there is a legal problem in the language included for the Baltic Reassurance Initiative. So there were $200 million in aid and support for the Baltics. And the Senate pressed them about why that money hasn't been released. And it was only revealed to them within that Senate hearing, 5 months after the law was passed, that the lawyers at the Department of Defense believe that the language needs to be changed because there was some kind of improper language put into it. This is just dragging their feet, as we say in the United States, slowing down the aid to Ukraine and by whatever means necessary. We saw the stoppages that were done by Elbridge Colby back in 2025, and again once at the beginning of this year. Whatever this administration can do to stop the will of Congress, because it's very clear that Congress still is very bullish and very pro sending aid to Ukraine, supporting Ukraine in this fight, because that is part of U.S. law, that the United States will assist Ukraine in regaining its territory. But this administration seems to be doing things in a way that's beyond the barriers of law, so post-legislative, and trying to do things executively without any oversight, which is one of the key reasons that law in December of 2025, the NDAA, it included specific provisions that both the Secretary of Defense and the Director of Policy, which is Elbridge Colby, must be testifying in front of Congress no less than every 90 days, something they refused to do in the first year of the administration, 2025.